Episode: Emerging Professional. Professional youth, always striving. My career was a wild ride from the start, being driven entirely by self-determination and self-teaching with the aid of mentors. In fact, although I just turned 49 years old myself, 1 year older than the age my sister died, I wrote several pen and paper advanced Dungeons & Dragons role-playing games, RPGs, adventure modules before the age of 17. I had my first computer game published by the age of 18, and I put myself through college at San Jose State University while creating freelance computer games. I admit there were quite a few failed attempts. Okay, rejections along the way too. But I stayed at it since I was 13 years old. I never gave up. And I still do not give up. I remember there were times that I snuck into my stepfather's computer area. I think I was around 4th grade. It might have even been 3rd. But I would sneak over there and figure out how to read the books he had about programming. And I would try to learn how to use the computer and even program. But he did not want me to use his computer at that time. It was his computer. It was super expensive. And they had, my parents, very little money. So they did not want any kids messing up the computer. But I wanted to use the computer. And my mother told me that if I used it and absolutely left no trace, no damage, nothing, she was okay. Well, I would memorize where pencils were, an eraser, a stapler, anything, so that I could replace them perfectly before I left, anytime I used the computer. That way, nobody would know I had ever used it. My parents had purchased that computer, an Apple II, with a huge loan, and so they were highly protective of it. It was my parents' investment in their dream of becoming programmers someday. They felt strongly that this new home computer was the key to their future and a path to a better life and to more money and more respect. Life would prove that they were right. It was hard for them, but they eventually became programmers, both of them, and they rose to be senior engineers. They despised the idea of ever being in management or leading teams, however, and so they capped their careers at being senior engineers. The same was true of their learning to program for me. Programming would become my path to a better life. I was young and was apparently a technology sponge. I could absorb computer technology like learning a first language. It just happened, no effort. Just like when you start talking as a child. Well, I just started programming. There was no effort involved. I could just see code, software, hardware interfaces, soft switches. Everything about electronics and programming computers was as natural to me as talking and speaking in English. I saw correlations and connections instantly. It was like I was created to program. Everything just was and made complete sense. I could not understand why my parents struggled at all. At 9 years old, and the first real coding thing I ever did was beyond playing around just in code. No, I modified programs that were on cassette tape, Star Trek and Breakout. I could not win playing Star Trek. The Klingons always blew up the Enterprise. But I discovered it was written in AppleSoft Basic, a primitive programming language. I was able to break into the basic programming prompt, view and modify the source code, and try out my changes immediately. It was amazing. Quickly, I gave myself more photon torpedoes and phasers and shields so that I could defeat the Klingons much more easily. I changed how far and fast the Enterprise could move. It was not major, but the changes were exciting, and they made me feel powerful and special. Breakout was not the same kind of game, though. It did not really have a win state but rather just kept adding more and more levels with more and more balls to hit with a paddle, like Atari's original video game Pong. I made the paddle wider. I made extra paddles move in synergy with one paddle that was controlled by me. I made more balls and made them move at various speeds. It was all about proving to myself that I could do anything that I could imagine. My mother wondered because I was in utero when she was taking a COBOL and Fortran programming classes in 1968. Maybe there was some kind of weird integration of that thinking into my exposure through the classes while in utero. A chemical learning imprinted into my brain. A cognitive computer logical brain formed as my mother took the course. All of it seemed pretty far-fetched to me, I must say, but my mother has always been imaginative in those kinds of ways. And so, I cannot say that she was wrong, nor can I say that she was right. Many people found it hard to believe that I wrote my first computer game for the Apple II when I was 13 years old, which for the record was sadly not published. I called it Beneath Richard's House, a simple text input adventure game. The player would enter multi-word commands, and the game would parse the words to find nouns and verbs to decide what the player intended to do. For example, walk north, go east, grab the rock, break a vase, etc. As the player did these things, the story would unfold. A simple but fun game on the computer that let me express my technical and creative writing skills. As I wrote my computer games, I also wrote Dungeons & Dragons, D&D, adventure module books, since I could tell much more elaborate stories in the medium of just text. I ultimately submitted 2 adventure modules to TSR Hobbies Incorporated. They were the makers of the first Dungeons & Dragons game and publisher of Dragon magazine. But they rejected me. I received rejection letters at least. And so I edited my modules and I resubmitted them. But I received more rejection letters. I got more and more rejection than I can remember. And so I decided maybe I should give up writing stories through Dungeons & Dragons. I decided since I could write code and write stories, perhaps I should merge them in a big way. I could write stories using technology. I made Venture, my first story game. Then I made Venture 2, another game based on stories. They were 2 adventure games that were to cross a wilderness graphic map, fighting monsters, collecting loot, enlisting followers, and solving puzzles. I thought it was a competitive game for what was on the market in that era, and so I tried very hard to find someone who might publish it. But this time, it was a real computer game, not just a text module. I was 15 and a half years old. I had recently acquired my driver's license in the state of California. I had done research on where a company called Bruterbund Software, a computer game publisher, was located. It was about 2 hours away in Marin County, in an area called San Rafael. With a friend of mine in the time, Jeff Lefferts, we journeyed there in my old 1968 Buick Electra. It was a huge gas-guzzling tank of a car, a land boat as they called it in the era. A quick rejection was my first meeting though. 2 producers met Jeff and I in the parking lot, not even in the building. They gave us words of discouragement and handed me a rejection letter. They said, come back in years, when I had something that was actually worthy that they could publish. They did not even provide suggestions on what could be improved or what I could do to get published. They were very abundantly clear. Go home. We do not want you We do not want your game. It was heartless, cruel, and eye-opening. People can be cruel, no matter how hard you try or work. People may not show compassion or consider the perspective of those they're talking to, especially when they have power or influence over them. People can be abusive without overtly intending to be so, but they are abusive just the same. I guess it came down to this: people suck. Or at least some people suck. And these producers sucked. Because I always valued the story of Don Quixote, when I first saw the movie of it, acted by Peter O'Toole and Sophia Loren, it inspired me to read the original Cervantes' Don Quixote and learn whatever I could about his inspiring narrative. I went to Don Quixote plays as well later in life. When I first obtained my driver's license, I drove directly to San Jose videotape retailers, where I could buy the VHS movie of Don Quixote. I felt like it was a major achievement. I had a driver's license, and I had my inspirational story. Everyone has little things that inspire and motivate them in life. Some people aspire to become or attain something. Other people want to be adored and be famous. Few seek to give and help others, but there are those that do. Whatever the driving force, most people have something that keeps them going. I found minor keys in music moved me to feel things more deeply and to want to do great things. Somehow, the sadness that I heard in the minor keys made me want to rise and overcome sorrow and oppression that the sad notes connoted. Aerosmith's song Dream On was a sad song that moved me emotionally as well and made me want to achieve great things, and likewise move the world's population in a similarly profound way. And yet another song, Don McLean's American Pie, with its lyrics, "The Day the Music Died," that he wrote about the death of Buddy Holly in a plane crash. That touched my heart and soul deeply as well. Dream On, an American Pie. Hopeful sorrow reminds me of Cervantes' book Don Quixote and Arthur Miller's movie of that, Man of Lamancha. They all inspire me to look to the future and to maximize each and every day. I loved a game series back in the day called Ultima. It was a computer role-playing game, CRPG, where the player went on quests to do things and save the kingdom or the world, as was typical of CRPGs of the time. In Ultima, there was a repeating theme and corresponding quote from its king, Lord British: "Journey onward, experience more." Whenever things were especially trying or challenging for me, I would reflect on that game, Ultima 4, Quest of the Avatar, specifically because that release of the game was all about virtue and righteousness. And I would think of the virtues and the supporting culture and ideologies for them, even if they were in a fantasy world. Simple things can pull you from deep holes in the ground, or from the bottom of a well, or out of a deep, dank cave. It is important to hold on to them with all of your strength, because without them, we become untethered and will most certainly go adrift and fail in life. My stepfather Sam's tombstone reads, "Journey onward, experience more," because his daughter Jolene saw how much Sam grabbed and held on to that quote to the very day that he died. Sam did not play Ultima, But the quote resonated with him, so much so that his daughter felt he should take that quote with him into the afterlife and eternity. And so that is why his tombstone reads, "Journey onward, experience more." I remember thinking how much more efficient it is to play adventure games when you plan quest routes according to your assigned mission quests. I would strategize the most efficient way to achieve my goals and complete my quests, and possibly exploit a design flaw or a hole in the game by combining or completing quests in an unanticipated order. It was simply this: stack quests in a series so the location and time proximity are maximized.